Hey everyone, it's B with To Be Fruitful Training Group. All praises to the Most High. Before we go ahead and get started, I just wanted to say this is all fair use. It's all for the purposes of teaching, commentating, and presenting the information for training and educational purposes in a classroom setting. And out of Corpus Juris Secundum, this is Book 90 on trusts. I have Section 253. It says, under a passive or dry trust, the whole legal and equitable estate is merged and vests immediately and directly in the beneficiary. Under a passive or dry trust, the whole legal and equitable estate is merged and vests completely and immediately and directly to the beneficiary, and he or she is entitled to the actual possession and enjoyment of the property. The beneficiary may convey the estate and pass good title without the intervention of the trustee, or may call on the trustee to execute conveyance of the legal estate as he or she directs. In contrast, in an active trust, the legal and equitable titles to the trust property do not merge. So merger of titles creates what's known as fee simple, absolute, or allodial title, provided that the trust has legal ownership of the res itself. But this is out of Corpus Juris Secundum. So with the second witness, we have Cornell Law, trust merger. Trust merger is when the sole trustee and the sole beneficiary of the trust are the same person or institution. When this occurs, there is no longer a separation between the trustee's legal ownership of the trust property and the beneficiary's interest. The trust merges and ceases to exist. Put another way, when the person responsible for managing the trust is the same person as the recipient of the trust benefits, the trust ends. So out of Black's Law, 2nd edition, we have Allodial. Allodial defined says free, not holden of any lord or superior, owned without obligation of vassalage or fealty, the opposite of feudal. Barker versus Dayton, 28 Wisconsin, 3S4. Wallace versus Illarmstead, 44 PA 499. And also out of Black's 2nd edition, we have Allodium. It says land held absolutely in one's own right and not of any lord or superior. Land not subject to feudal duties or burdens. An estate held by absolute ownership without recognizing any superior to whom any duty is due on account thereof. Washburn Real Property, McCarty versus Orphan Asylum. Sorry. Also out of Black's Law, 2nd edition, we have title. It's defined. The radical meaning of this word appears to be that of a mark, style, or designation. A distinctive appellation, the way by which anything is known. Thus, in the law of persons, a title is an appellation of dignity or distinction, a name denoting the social rank of the person who bearing it, as duke or count. So in legislation, the title of a statute is the heading or preliminary part, furnishing the name by which the act is individually known. It is usually prefixed to the statute in the form of a brief summary of its contents, as an act for the prevention of gaming. Again, the title of a patent is the short description of the invention, which is copied in the letters patent from the inventor's petition. In the law of trademarks, a title may become a subject of property, as one who has adopted a particular title for a newspaper or other business enterprise may, by long and prior user, or by compliance with statutory provisions as to registration and notice, acquire a right to be protected in the exclusive use of it. The title of a book or any literary composition is its name. That is, the heading or caption prefixed to it, and disclosing the distinctive appellation by which it is to be known. So you might ask, what does this mean? Well, in the 3 positions in the trust, the three main positions in a trust. You have the grantor or the settlor conveying the rights. You have the legal title held by the trustee, and you have the equitable title, as it's referred to. Really, it's the equitable interest held by the beneficiary. Now, when the grantor conveys the rights of the beneficiary to the trustee without an express intention of the trustee conveying the property or the equitable interest to any other beneficiary, it's considered a dry or passive trust, because the legal title then passes, for not having a trustee, it passes to the beneficiary. And so what you have is, in essence, a merger of titles. And now when you have this merger of titles, the beneficiary receives the legal title, and then you have the conveyance of all of the trust res. When that happens, the trust terminates, as the purpose of the trust has been fulfilled, to convey the legal title or the fee simple ownership to the beneficial owner, the one who has an interest in the property named according to the trust instruments. So now what we have are the rights, titles, and interests. So these are how they pass. Now, so once you have a merger of titles, let's say someone owes a debt for, let's say, $10, and the executor of the estate makes a tender special deposit for $10. Now, since the executor, most likely the contributing heir in many cases, has given valuable consideration and essentially gives, in essence, a lien on the estate in the exact amount of the debts. So once there is that merger of titles in that other party, the $10 has ceased, because now they have a right of inheritance of $10 from the estate and has the debt of the $10. So then the two titles merge, the legal title to the debt and the equitable interest or equitable asset, and the accounts zero out. It's the same principle, only when there is a remainder of property held in trust, whatever is not touched by the debts of the trust, or however the title to the property passes, then it merges with the beneficiary's interest. So what do you have when the beneficiary's interest has been merged with the legal title? Well, that would be an allodial title, or a fee simple absolute. So this title is recognized as the highest form of title in the current modern system that we have. Now, what do you get if you go back prior to this? So what would you have? Well, it's because of the papal bulls and dum diversas, we look to what the highest members of the Roman Catholic Church have as far as persons. So, Modern Corporation Sole. This is by Dickinson Law Review, Penn State. James B. O'Hara. Again, this is fair use. And in here, it defines the original sense of a corporation sole. Now, there is a distinction, and in this law review as well, between the modern corporation sole, as it is presently known, and the original common law or English corporation sole. So what this is referring to specifically right here is the old common law corporation sole. And straight from the law review, have, quote, legal nomenclature is for once its own interpreter. A member of a corporation sole is one of a series of single persons succeeding one another in some official position. The crux of this description is not that the corporation sole is composed of a single person. Rather, it is really composed of a number of persons who, one after another, hold the same office. The really crucial element of this definition is the series itself and the seriatim succession. For example, Queen Elizabeth II, as a corporation sole, is identical to Victoria, The present Archbishop of Canterbury in his corporate form is one with his predecessors Laud, Benson, or Lang. The corporation soul, unlike its business counterpart, is only vertical in time. There are very few points of corporation law applicable to a corporation soul, according to Kent. There are, however, 4 legal characteristics unique to it. 1. All corporations soul are, quote, either public officers or dignitaries of the established church. Sounds like estate dignitaries. In short, the corporation soul is the incorporation of an office, executor office. At common law, the corporation soul can claim title to real property only. 3. Property and powers of a corporation soul are transferred on the death of an incumbent to successors in the office, not to heirs or through executors. And 4. The corporation soul lacks the usual trappings of a corporation. It does not have a board of directors, officers, stock, bylaws, official minutes, seal, or a corporate name. The older corporation soul are also devoid of a royal charter or other formal authorization, characteristics that are required in later corporations. So it's important to note, there's no formal charter, authorization, state government, federal government. It was all done by successors in office. Historically, both the king and a variety of clergy qualified as corporations in their official capacities. However, the ecclesiastical form is older, dating to the mid-15th century. Initially, the corporation soul grew out of the efforts of judges to solve title problems that arose from the passage of real property to a church. Although the early common law of property was elaborate and intricate, it sometimes lacked the sophistication to deal with these problems. At that time, legal forms did not exist that allowed the devise of real property to a church in fee simple absolute. The law struggled with this problem in amusing ways. For example, property was sometimes devised to the saint after whom a parish was named, or to the 4 walls of a church building. Under these circumstances, the local bishop or priest was the agent or administrator. Therefore, it was only a short leap in logic to incorporate the agent. The hierarchical polity of the English church was well suited to this type of corporate structure. However, it was still another 150 years before a civil corporation soul appeared, when Lord Coke ascribed corporateness to the crown. Blackstone confidently called this development uniquely English. In one sense, he is correct, but modern scholarship also finds a powerful Roman Catholic canon law influence on the process. And the other thing I'd like to point out in here, it says the statutory or new corporation soul, this is what I meant earlier, in contrast, applies to those who are designated at the time of their incorporation. The old corporation soul, the common law one, was, quote, in abeyance, end quote, at the time of a vacancy, whereas the new corporation soul continues through temporary agents. The old corporation soul could not hold title to real estate only, and alienation of the property was difficult and legally questionable. The new corporation soul has the same power over its property as any other corporation and is not limited to in the type of property it can own. In short, the new statutory corporation soul removes the vagaries of the old. Two subsequent amendments completed the law. In 1894, the restriction to real property was removed. The Archbishop, as a corporation soul, was given the power to exercise rights over property, quote, real, personal, or mixed. Finally, in 1927, the acreage restriction was completely removed. Now, this is also very important to note because you have the separation between the realms, spiritual and temporal, by William the Conqueror, William I. And that's another thing to go read as well, as it separated in essence the courts that you could go to for spiritual matters, dealing with matters of the spirit or ecclesiastical, and matters concerning the body or the corporation, which you would have to go to a court temporal. So let's say you had a matter that dealt with both the body, corporate, politic, corporeal, and the soul or the mind, the agent, the hand that actually moves the corporation, and the being behind it, and it concerned both the spirit and the spiritual and the body and the temporal. Well, you'd have to go to two different courts to get remedy for both, the single issue. Something else to take note of: the Achilles heel of the old corporation soul was that the corporation itself was a person holding an office. When the incumbent died, the common law could only hold the corporate life and activity in suspension or abeyance until the office was filled again. In regard to the old corporation soul, Maitland said, "Our corporation soul is a man who dies." Carr added, "That is the difficulty. The artificial personality of the corporation is not strong enough to compel us to ignore the natural personality of the sole incorporator. The office has not been completely personified if the death of the office holder can cause such a deadlock." So, seeing as kingdoms and even ecclesiastical positions hold the power and position of a corporation soul in its original sense, how then is a corporation soul conveyed in by heirship or descent? Well, let's say this office was held in a trust. So this office or this corporation soul is then conveyed in the form of an equitable interest, a trust, through the heirs, whether testate or intestate. Now, testate just means they simply died with a will. Intestate means they died with no valid will. So let's say they died testate and the testator left a valid will. Then the heir holds interest in the office, and the heir can reclaim the office and establish succession. Now, there's certain things that have to be due to be legally recognized. However, it is still considered that same office, that executor office. Now, how did it become an executor's office? It's because the executor still has to file the debts and duties for the estate and owes his obligation to the beneficiary of the estate. So then, what happens if the executor is the sole beneficiary of the estate? What then becomes of the estate, or really trust, held in abeyance? Well, that once the titles merge, then you have the legal estate with the equitable estate, and its origin, seeing as most of the world's property was forfeited to the Roman Catholic Church via the papal bulls and dum diversas, it would, in essence, be in that same office. Would that then mean that the character or the nature of the office that is passed is the same nature or office as the Lord's ecclesiastical, like the archbishop or the vicars? So what happens if there are no heirs, or the heirs are unknown, they haven't stepped forth to claim anything? Well, then this office, held in the form of a trust or a name, a title, is then seemingly abandoned, and the estate is then passed through a escheat to the feudal lord, or the person having jurisdiction over the estate, while someone has yet to lay claim to it. So in this time period, the office is held in abeyance, the twilight zone, the land between life and death, and this is when it's forfeited. So Another term to note is to signify the allodial title or the perfect title. You have droit. Please forgive my pronunciation. I don't speak French. Droit is a legal term that refers to the unification of the right of possession with the right of property. It is also known as jus duplicatum or dre. This means that a person has a complete title to lands, tenements, and hereditaments when they have both the right of possession and the right of property. And out of Black's Law, 2nd edition, a double right. That is the right of possession, the right of property. These two rights were, by the theory of our ancient law, distinct, and the above phrase was used to indicate the concurrence of both in one person, which concurrence was necessary to constitute a complete title to land. Mosley and Whitley. So, what happens when the legal estate is merged with the equitable estate? You have a complete title of ownership, fee simple absolute, or a complete conveyance in the lands, hereditaments, and the appurtenances and all of the fixtures to the property as well. So, when you have that, it's essentially the right of a king. Every man is king in his own house. So that is the crown, the full crown. It says the link between Roman Catholicism and the legal concept of a corporation sole was surprising for two reasons. First of all, in England, this mode of incorporation was limited to the Anglican Church. In fact, the Roman Catholic hierarchy was not reinstated in England until 1850. Second, Catholic canon law did not envision a one-person corporation. The minimum number required to constitute a, quote, collegiate moral person, end quote, was 3. Even the Pope was not a corporation sole. Even though bishops of dioceses have a great autonomy in church law, favorable action by a board of consulators is still required on major property decisions to this day. Now, who are these 3 collegiate moral persons? Are these the 3 persons?